Chris Barbic, welcome to CharterFolk Chat. It's so great to have you here. Thanks for being willing to do this.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And dude, congratulations, man. Charter School Hall of Fame. Gotta say, this is a choice that was a very wise one. But can you just walk me through what were your reactions when whomever it was that called you? What were you thinking? And what's it like to that first hour after you learned something like this?
It was awesome, Jed. When you think about just all the great people that work in our sector, you know them, we grew up together with them. You highlight a lot of them in CharterFolk. It's just an awesome group of people. So to get recognized for your work among such an incredible group, man, I just couldn't be more grateful for it. It was a great feeling. I was surprised. The way I found out about it was Natalie Kaharick, who runs the Texas Public Charter School Association. So she reached out and said, "Hey, we're going to nominate you for this." And I was kind of like, "Look, I haven't been at Yes for like 15 years. Why now?" And she's like, "Well, that's true, but you've been on our board for a long time. You've done a bunch of good work through the association." She mentioned my work in Tennessee with the Charter Association there, and then City Fund. Just through our work, we stay very connected to the charter sector. I get to meet tons of new leaders, try and drop whatever knowledge I can. So when she kind of talked about the work outside of Yes Prep, it was less of a surprise, but man, just incredibly grateful for it.
So give us the backstage pass. Who called you? Where were you?
I found out from Andrea at the Alliance that they were doing it. Well, I knew I was getting nominated about 2 weeks before, but you never know if they accept your nomination or not. So I guess that makes me a first ballot Hall of Famer, which makes me even more grateful. So found out from Andrea about a few weeks before the conference, and I don't know what you're like. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. They just said, "Hey, don't share this with too many people," because they didn't want me to get out in front of the media. So I started letting some people at City Fund who I work with know a few days before, because I knew they were going to be at the conference. So the thing that probably felt the best, Jed, was when I would finally share with some folks. The number of people who I really respect who are just like, "Man, that's super well deserved." So again, coming from just such awesome leaders, many of whom I've gotten to work with, it just felt really good. It's always great to be recognized for your work. So it really was a highlight of the summer.
Well, I was doing some work for the National Founders Library, Charter School Founders Library, which you're on the advisory board of. And I basically did some research to look at who all has been appointed, because we really don't have a great website. We will soon, celebrating everybody. But it's about 37, 38 people. There have been a few institutions that have been chosen, but this is a very small group of people. And so, as you think about your own work, how does being recognized in this way, has it affected at all what you're thinking about in terms of what your impact has been, where the biggest difference was made? Or are you still just basically thinking about your work in the same way that you were, say, 3 or 4 months ago?
I think it's a nice way of saying you're old. No, I think the conversation with Natalie that just really made me think about more than just the work at Yes Prep, which was awesome and fun, but just the connection to the charter sector in a few different roles and seats, and even today, I guess just had me thinking a little bit more broadly. But I just feel lucky, man. I've gotten to work with so many great people and on something that I still care so much about, and I'm still learning a ton. So not many people at 55 get to say those things. So I'm just couldn't be more grateful.
So do you think about your work in 3 big themes, 3 big chapters? Is it Yes? Is it Tennessee ASD? And is it City Fund? Or do you have different ways that you would talk
No,
about it?
I think that's right. Yes Prep as an operator, as a founder, the role of ASD was, we were really, if you boil it down, we were an authorizer. We authorized a bunch of schools to do turnaround work. And then now as a funder and a supporter through City Fund, Yeah, I think those are definitely the three big chapters in my career.
And I don't know if you're like me or not. Do I have whatever. I have some chapters as well. Perhaps not quite as distinct as your own, but there's something about those 7 years at Hooper Avenue in the
Mhm.
classroom. It like if I have dreams at night, I don't dream about being an authorizer at San Diego Unified School District. I actually don't even dream that much about finishing buildings or opening up a graduate school at High Tech High. There are some advocacy fights in the legislature. They do wake me up still, but
Yeah.
really, what's like most deeply seeped into my pores probably are those experiences in the classroom. And it just makes me wonder, is it the same for you? Is there something about Yes that is on an even deeper register than perhaps some of this other work?
No doubt, man. I mean, I think it gets back to the origin story. I mean, I started Yes Prep as a frustrated teacher. I taught sixth grade in an elementary school that finished in sixth grade. So I was doing Teach America in Houston. And because it was an elementary school with a lot of the kids that left to go to the middle school who had younger brothers and sisters at the school where I was still teaching, I would see my kids come back to pick up their younger brother and sister. They'd swing by the classroom, and it was just like one horror story after another about how lousy the middle school was. And so being able to pivot from that experience, really, create the school of my dreams, and then bring along former students, uh, educators from around the city, great educators from around the city. I mean, that was like magical, So yeah, those early years definitely stand out. And I mean, it was probably like this for you. We worked so hard. I mean, we were
Yeah.
going to school from 7:30 to 5, Saturday, 3 times a month. And when you're working, and we were all young and about the same age, like it was your colleagues, these were your friends outside of work. I mean, when you're working with people that intensely, you just develop a different kind of bond, I think. And man, so I just, yeah, I look back on those years with nothing but love and fond memories.
I was going to do this in a different order, but you've kind of gone in this direction anyway. So let me just go into this: how hard you worked, and how hard everybody was working. And I mean that is a hallmark. People will talk about Chris Barbic, just the hours at the ASD as well, and the grueling political challenges at the ASD as well. How have you sustained this work over that period of time? I mean, how do you? Are you smarter now about how hard you can push yourself and how hard you can't? Um, Anything you've
Yeah, well, I
along
mean,
those.
I had a heart attack when I was doing that, and I was 44. So probably not a poster child for someone that should be giving advice on this topic. But
Well, maybe exactly. Maybe what you learned it through that
yeah,
experience is, you know,
well, that's
exactly what we want to hear.
I think that I mean, I'm definitely taking better care of myself. The work I'm doing now is not. I mean, it's I work hard, and everybody on our team at Study Fund works hard. But it's different kind of work. I'll never forget when I started working in the funding space. The first person I called was Don Shalvey, and
Yeah.
because Don had been at Aspire and was at Gates, and I was like, Don, drop some knowledge on me. Like, how should I be thinking about this? And he had this great line where he's like, when you're working in schools, whether it's as a principal or as um, a leader of a charter network, you're the director. He's like, in this role, you're more the executive producer. You're trying to find the good directors and you're pouring into them, which is still important work, but different kind of work. And that analogy's always stuck with me. I mean, of course, Don, said something really wise I still think about today. But it's different kind of work. And I think, what's even though I had some health challenges, what was really important kind of getting through the work and still, why I'm so excited to still be in it is you got to have a sense of humor. I just think and you got to surround yourself with people who do too. So, one of the things we talk a lot about at the ASD was we can take the work seriously. We can't take ourselves too seriously. And even though those community meetings would get hot, there were some heavy conversations. We would always try and find, we'd get together afterwards, grab a beer, download, debrief, and still try and find the light moments. And there were certainly some where they were worth a laugh or two. So I think as much as the hard work's hopefully been a hallmark, it's also been a spirit of always having fun doing this because you got to
Yeah.
have a great time. So that's been important too.
Yeah. Well, when you have a chance to do it with people like Don, and the circle that he drew together with Miss Don every day, right?
Yeah,
But
man.
you're a fellow Hall of Fame member, along with the guy at this point. So, but I don't know. I think, um, I mean, I'm not going to put myself out there as having been through the ringer as much as you or lots of other people in our movement, but I think I also am keyed into when the lift is really, really heavy, but it's just a privilege and a joy because like you can see the stuff coming together. And then there's the heavy lift that burns, that just burns, and you're, you know, threatening your own fuse here. And it just seems as though since COVID, since George Floyd, there have been those moments where I think a lot of charter school leaders, a lot of charter folk have just seen that heavy lift
Yeah.
turn from something that just gave them greater meaning and actually filled them with new things to something that just simply burned. Um, but now I don't know. I feel like we're kind of like coming through on the other side of this thing.
I agree.
And I'm not having the same conversations I had with people 3 years ago. Yeah, I've got people, your age that, have retired. And I'm like, no, we're going to get these people back. But just talk to me about, how, how to, what is the work that sustains us? And then how do we get through the work that's just so ridiculously challenging that we shouldn't have to put up with it. But unfortunately, we do have to.
Well, I mean, I agree. I do think we are kind of coming out of the like dark fog that we were all sort of like wandering around in for a while. And that's been motivating for me. I think it's been motivating for the school leaders I've talked to. I'm on the board of Yes Prep now. So it was awesome to be able to see, the incredible data that the team there and the kids, their outcomes this past school year. And it felt like a big change from the prior years after COVID. So I know that's one example. That's the one I'm closest to. So it's one I mentioned, but you put something recently, I think it was the last CharterFolk email out about the Tennessee data and just how strong
Yeah.
that was post COVID.
Yeah.
So
Pretty
I
cool.
think
That's
having
cool.
this little like data points
Yeah.
around the country that shows, okay, we are. I mean, I know we talked about swagger, so it's kind of a setup for this. It does feel like we're starting to get our swagger back, and it's awesome and it's motivating. I think that's what is that fuel that gets people that it might have been feeling down and out and kind of in survival mode during COVID to okay, it's time to thrive now, and looks like people are doing that.
Well, by rights, I probably would have reached out to you for this interview no matter what. But when I was there at the conference and there was the gathering and all of the inductees had a chance to speak to a real large audience there, your comments about swagger, I was like, that's Modi. Absolutely. Absolutely. If there's anything I could want, for our movement right now, it would be that we could have had thousands more people in there, a little bit quieter so we can hear every word, but just share, what was for those that weren't there or for those that couldn't hear everything. What is this swagger concept you're talking about and why did it occur to you and what do you think its implications are?
Sure. I think it comes back to high expectations and excellence. I mean, we've been around long enough. We were there when the sector started, and and I said this that night in Orlando. Charters weren't started to be slightly better than the traditional public school district.
Yeah.
The goal and North Star has always been to be way better than the neighboring school and to be kind of a proof point in the community for kids and families. And it felt like, and what I was, worried about, but maybe less worried about now was that, I mean, COVID was a punch to everybody's face. I mean, we were all, and, I also feel like I should say I wasn't leading schools during that time. So it's easy to kind of like, Monday morning quarterback from the cheap seats, but I know that it was how hard it was for leaders. It felt like we kind of lost our way a little bit on this idea of excellence because I think it's hard to aspire to excellence when you're just trying to like get by every day.
Yeah.
You're in survival mode. And I think people were in survival mode, and we were kind of on our heels in a defensive posture. And I think my point that night was, it's time to get back to our roots of outcomes for kids, excellence, being a proof point for kids and families in a neighborhood where maybe there aren't a ton of great options. And I do think since that night, I'm more optimistic too. I think one, the conversations, I don't know if you picked up on this, but I felt like at the conference, there were a lot more conversations about we got to get back to high expectations. We got to get back to excellence. You know, sure, we can learn some lessons from some people like to throw rocks at no excuses schools version 1.0. And I think some of that's fair. I think some of it was overblown, but there was no doubt that like combining high expectations with support and the right balance of tough and love, I mean, that works, and it did work. And that's, so I think like getting back to some of that, which it felt like more people were willing to have those conversations. And then just some of the data points we talked about. I mean, when you're seeing elementary charter schools in Tennessee where kids are getting 174 additional days of learning, that's almost like a whole school year. I mean, so I can't think of a better example of like, yeah, we're definitely starting to get our slacker back. So but yeah, I think the bottom line for me is it's about excellence for kids. It's about what we expect from our kids. They can do it. We should expect it. We should support them. And just having that be kind of getting back to the days where that's our North Star.
Well, I think that CharterFolk exists because, I mean, Kevin Hall from Charter School Growth Fund in that first year after I was out of CCSA gave me a travel grant, and I got to go to between 30 and 35 states. I had to stop traveling because COVID hit. But it was that tour where I had a chance to talk to charter school people in all sorts of different settings, where I came away from it just feeling as though we had lost a sense of confidence that we were even on the right side of history.
Yeah.
And that there was something maybe questionable about us. Were we a part of some big plot? Were we all some Trumpian, sideshow? And that's when I was just like, okay, we got to invest more in our own people. Charter folk are ultimately going to determine whether or not the movement proves successful or not. And yet there's a difference too between swagger and kind of hubris, because I think there are moments when we've been excessively cocky, or we thought it was going to be easier than it was, or whatever it might have been. So can you parse out a little bit more about what's the difference between swagger and what is a kind of cockiness that, hopefully we've outgrown?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think of it as more as thriving, not as arrogance. It's moving past survival mode where you're just trying to get through the day to having bigger aspirations for ourselves and our kids and our families, which I don't think's arrogant. I think it's what they deserve. And so I see it much more as a mindset of thriving and less a mindset of hubris. And I agree. I mean, you could hear, and I heard similar conversations, and I felt like, and maybe you felt this way too, but as someone that, has kind of been around this for a long time, really since the beginning, just trying to help people understand the history of what it was we were all trying to do. The no excuses wasn't about being, unnecessarily harsh on kids. It was about not letting ourselves off the hook as adults because we were going to make excuses for why our kids couldn't do the work. It was about high expectations, supporting our kids, the right balance of tough and love. And, did some people maybe go too far with some of that? Maybe, but it was always coming out of a spirit of love, good intentions. And so I just think opportunities to have those conversations just to kind of like set the record straight a little bit and make sure that the wrong narratives aren't taking root when nobody I knew and nobody I still know doing this is doing this because they wake up every morning looking in the mirror saying, I want to be, terrible to kids today. I mean, it's
right.
The best of intentions. And so, and again, I think we've kind of like moved through some of that, and the tone of the conversations, at least the ones I've I've been having more recently seem to be a lot different. And it's got me really optimistic about the future.
Yeah, I think there's something, a combination of knowing that we're on the right side of history. That, as Howard Fuller teaches us, another of your, fellow Hall of Fame inductees. This is about excellence and equity, and we got to deliver on both of them.
Yeah.
And having that sense of confidence that there's something fundamentally not fair about the way our public education system works, and having a sense of confidence that while we have all sorts of problems,
Yeah.
we have something very profound to offer.
Yeah.
Um, at the same time that we know that our schools are actually doing a great job with kids. You
Mhm.
put those two things together, and you can bring the swagger to it. I actually think that, the more that we're aware of the fact that we have made mistakes in the past, it makes us stronger. I think that, I mean, one of my favorite introductions to any book is Taylor Branch's Parting of the Waters. Love that book. Love that book. And in the introduction, he talked about the United States. Perhaps its greatest strength was its self-correcting nature. Uh,
Mhm.
we've made all these mistakes, and somehow or another, we find a way to correct. And I just have come back to that again and again. You know, charter school movement, it's one of those things that's pretty self-correcting as well.
I totally agree. I mean, I think when we think about this idea of learning organizations, I think that's the hallmark of our best schools and our best operators who, yeah, they they hit some resistance, some adversity, learn from it, or quick to implement the changes and the new things they need to do as a result of what they learned, and then they start getting after it again so the kids can excel. And I think that's what I think we're starting to see that. I think that's always probably been happening since COVID. Maybe it was just happening inside classrooms in school, so someone like me may not have seen it as much, but it feels like now um, the fruit we're starting to bear the fruit from some of
Yeah.
that. And yeah, it's like I'm just couldn't be more optimistic, like I said. So can't wait for more data to come out. I know in Texas they're going to release
Yeah.
the report cards later this month. I think we're kind of hitting that season where a lot of this data that maybe have been embargoed for schools is now going to start being made public. So I'm hoping it's just another flurry of good news stories. And then the last thing I'd say in this swagger point, Jed, is that um, I think as part of this thriving and confidence is we weren't afraid to call out the system for what it was doing to our kids and families. And
Yeah.
we weren't, and I feel like there was a point in time where like we kind of like were crouching in the corner, like hoping nobody would see us. And we weren't vocally saying that what was happening in the neighborhoods where we were working with the kids that we cared about was just flat out wrong. And
Yeah.
I hope that now that we start to like grab the moral high ground again with our results and data, which it looks like is starting to happen, that we can parlay that into a little bit more confidently um, calling out the inequities and calling out just where the system's failing our kids, because it feels like we've as school leaders we've gotten away from that. Maybe that's because the associations have done a better job of it and they don't have to as much. But I think that's also another important part of this idea of swaggers. We can't just like be great for our kids, which we need to be. We also got to shine a light when the other side's failing our students. I think that's important too.
In terms of what we've learned, and you were there really early in Tennessee's intense investment anyway in charter schools and the whole concept of the ASD. Did that get started in 2012?
11.
2011. Okay. Um, and I think we would say that we have greater traction right now in 2025 than maybe we had in 2015 in Tennessee. We're making greater progress. I mean, can you use Tennessee as a lens for, hey, how are we self-correcting here? Why are we making more progress today than perhaps we were in the past? Any observations you would share there?
Good question. I mean, I think we've definitely learned. I mean, I think we learned um, some big lessons about out of state growth, how hard that is,
Mhm.
how complicated it is to just kind of like set up shop in a brand new state for the first time. Um, I think that for a lot of the operators that were coming here during those years, um, the standards and tests were harder than what they were used to. So
Yeah.
just, and now because, folks have been here for almost a decade, they've been able to kind of recalibrate, understand, the accountability systems here and make sure that their kids are ready for those assessments, which kind of gets back to the learning we talked about just a second ago. I think as the sector grows, the funder community here grows with it. I mean, we're serving probably right around 45,000 kids now.
Yeah.
Tennessee, there's 1 million kids in the state-ish, in public schools. So, in 2011, the sector was pretty small. And
Yep.
so, a lot of people had no idea what a charter school was, how it worked. And there's still probably too many people that don't know what one is. But as the sector grows, we get this awesome data like we just recently got, I think as we get more, just bright spots and proof points of what's possible, and we have those in not just Nashville and Memphis, which is traditionally where most of the charters were. It's still the vast majority, but we've got those proof points in Knoxville. We've got those proof points in Chattanooga. So it's just, I think because of that, we're able to touch more kids and families and make more people aware of what a school is and the kind of option it offers families.
I'll offer the following. I don't know if you would agree with this or not. I've often said there was this thing in Los Angeles. They called it the Broad Plan, where Eli Broad's foundation was going to like support the growth of, all these charter schools. Got to be extremely controversial and all that.
I remember that.
But, I just said the only thing I didn't like about the plan. Well, there are a lot of things I didn't like about it, but the thing I didn't like about it the most was the pronunciation. Broad should have been broad.
Mm.
The broad thinking was to go to a small number of organizations and those 2 or 3, we'll blow them out.
Mm-hmm.
Where my experience in Los Angeles and in California was there were so many great organizations. Now there were some that were definitely underperforming it. We should be calling for their closure. And, we did that at CCSA and all that stuff. But the broader the bet, that's when you unleash something.
Yeah.
And so if I was to compare now in Tennessee, we just have a broader bet happening, going from Chattanooga, going into other parts of the state. Hey, the sectors themselves in Memphis and in Nashville have matured, and across all of them, we're seeing them move. And it's when that collective, that's why CharterFolk and so many people doing this really, really matters. I see you nodding your head, but I don't know, would you offer any nuance to this or also try
Totally agree. I mean, I think of, when I think of a healthy sector in a city, I think that, there's probably like 2 or 3, what I would call kind of anchor operators who are serving maybe 30% of the kids. And then you've got, filled in with some single sites who are, just offering very unique models. And when I think about, Nashville's a great example of this. You've got KIPP, Lead, Valor, Rocket Ship, serving like, across the 4 or 5, and then probably 34 to 40% of the kids in the city. But then you've got just incredible single site operators like, Legger at Purpose Prep. You've got Charlie at Nashville Classical, who's got 2 schools now. You've got Aventura, which is, a Spanish immersion project-based K-8 school. There's a Tennessee Nature Academy. There's like all these different types of options. But you've also got your KIPPs and your Valors who are just doing like really awesome, college prep work. So I agree. We can't just point to like the 2 or 3 leaders and trot them out and say, this is the charter sector, because it's much broader than that in terms of who's leading, what their backgrounds are, the types of schools. And so, I think Nashville is just such a great example in Tennessee of what you're talking about.
Yep. So, and if we just broaden the circle beyond Nashville to the whole state, well, then we have to recognize Elaine Swafford from Chattanooga joins you as an inductee in the Hall of Fame this year, right?
It was in the house that night, Jed.
That was cool. It was really cool. All right. Well, let's focus a little bit. It wouldn't be, CharterFolk if I didn't put my thumb on the scale to talk a little bit about advocacy here. But I feel like the Tennessee story, and I don't want to disparage any actions of the past. I think everybody has been just making incredible efforts. And yet, I think we would probably summarize that our advocacy wasn't as strong as we would need it to be in Tennessee. But right now, with Tennesseans for Success, with David Mansouri there at SCORE, and with Elizabeth Fiveash now leading the center, I think we have the best advocacy in Tennessee that we've ever had. And also you've been a key person as a board member there and all of that. Could you summarize anything that you think we might have learned about building effective advocacy?
Well, I mean, I agree that in this last session, I think is evidence of that. I mean, we just had an incredible session. We made wins on facility funding, authorizing, which if you ask most operators here, what are the two biggest barriers? They would point to one or both of those things. Yeah, it was an incredible session. And I think the big lesson I would say, I mean, of course, leadership always matters, but is the power of coalition building, and having a group of, organizations with some overlapping interests, but also some areas that they don't overlap, who have, different priorities, all coming together on this issue in particular, working together incredibly well. It really was an example, I think, of 1 + 1 = 3 in terms of the coalitions. And you mentioned some of the key players. I felt like this last session, they've never been more coordinated and just closely linked, and they just worked really well together. And I think that's a big reason why we had such a great session.
Well, working effectively in a coalition is absolutely irreplaceable. I also will perhaps insufferably remind or assert that having a strong association is
No doubt.
essential.
Well, that's where the center of gravity was. And so I think that's probably, I should have said this. I think that's been another change, is that, because those organizations always, mostly played well together in the sandbox, but I think they were more closely coordinated. Sorry. And the center, which is the state association, it really was the center of gravity in a way that it hadn't been before,
Yep.
which is probably why the coalition works so well together. So no doubt. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely right.
I think it's kind of a broad thing as well, because if you look at the center, it originally wasn't a membership association, and it had just a few funders on their board, and those funders, they're probably going to be watching this. And hey, guys, I love you too. You made amazing efforts. And again, no disparaging of the past, but it was not set up to really leverage, the broad capacities of the Tennessee charter school community. And the center has further to go. I mean, we need to get more members and all of that stuff. But I just think we're seeing now in Tennessee for the first time what can really happen when, a center comes together with its members as an anchor, then really working well with the likes of SCORE and Tennesseans for Student Success, Tennessee Can, and all of that.
Yeah. And I would throw in the parent groups. I mean, Propel
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
Flift. I mean,
Pittsburgh City.
they were up at the Capitol. It's one thing to have the day on the Hill, which I think is important and good, but I also think it's easy when legislators know it's just one day to kind of like politely nod their heads and kind of blow you off and never talk to you again. Well, we knew that wasn't going to be enough. We needed to do that, but and we did. But we had parents, and really Propel and Lyft had parents up there,
Yeah.
on a weekly basis. So it wasn't just, I'm going to nod and never see you again. It's, hey, we're going to talk about this issue right now, and I'm going to be back here in 2 weeks to talk about it again and hold your feet to the fire. And having, Sonia, Propel, and Sarah at Memphis Lyft,
Yeah.
part of the coalition, I think that was a huge difference maker too.
Let's shift a little bit to your role in Texas. I think that the TPCSA's story in Texas is one of the most important advocacy success stories of the last decade. It's resulted in us having this very strong leader, Starley, at the National Alliance. There were all sorts of things that came together to take what had been an organization that was an effective one, but took it to whole other levels of impact. And my recurring mantra here is that our state associations can be no stronger than our boards are. And I find it weird as a movement, we've recognized that the weakness in our boards at the CMO level and the school level has been an obsession of ours. I mean, there are cottage industries of people that help with this, law firms that specialize in it, nonprofits that have been set up to do exactly that work. And there's been essentially no investment in the governance of our state associations.
Right.
And, you know, again, not disparaging the past,
Mhm.
but the strength of the board of the Texas Public Charter School Association and CSN, its C4 partner, was way stronger 5 years after you got on that board than when you started there. And now you're there as a board chair. I mean, first of all, thank you. I mean,
Oh,
just
it's
to
been
be
fun.
state association board chair and a great board member. There are very few things you can do that have greater leverage. But how would you summarize your learning experience across those 5 years? And what could you share with others? Encourage them to do what you're doing right now, but also to do so with perhaps some acumen that they might not have, give, given what you've been able to see in your years there.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing I'd say is that serving on both boards, the one in Texas and Tennessee at the association, has probably been some of the most rewarding board service I've done. And you would have asked me, 5 or 6 years ago heading into it, I would not have guessed that. So it's been
You made my month, Chris. Thank you for that.
it's been incredible. I would point to a few key things in Texas. I mean, first, of course, was hiring Starly. I mean,
Yeah.
leadership is incredible, and her leadership was transformational. But I'll never forget, there was a conversation. We were probably about a year into um, her being the CEO, and it was a board retreat. And it was at that meeting where there was some tension inside the organization about member services and advocacy.
Mm.
And it was at that meeting where basically we were the board was like, look, this needs to be an advocacy org, full stop. And Starley was kind of like, thank you for saying that, because that's what I've thought. So we kind of like took the shackles off and let her do her thing. And so we just realized, like, being a great state association means winning in Austin. That's period.
Yep.
That's it. And the member services stuff, there's other nonprofits that can fill those gaps. That's not something that the association can be best in class at. And so that sort of strategic shift was massive. And then once we made that shift, we just like did the work to kind of, operationalize that. I think, and this is something that I would not have known 5 years ago, but just the power of the C4 in the pack and
Yeah.
what that's meant. And so when you can couple that with some sort of campaign around reaching out to, registering even charter affiliated, whether it's teachers, parents, like that just creates a like virtuous cycle that's pretty unmatched. And I would say we went from an organization that didn't really matter in Austin when it came ledge session time to one of the most feared and respected in the state. And the other thing I've learned in politics is that if you're not feared, you're not respected. And this association's feared and respected.
Yep.
And we were never sitting at the big kid table, or at the adult table. We were at the kid table. And so we're sitting at the adult table now with the governor, with the lieutenant governor, with the speaker, and with the people that matter. And it makes being the board chair a fun and pretty easy job because the staff's so good. So I'd say focus on advocacy over membership services, C4s, PACs, how important they are. Those three things have been, I think, key milestones in the evolution of the association in Texas.
Now, this will be a dicey question to include in this one, but here's my question for you. I think that the Texas Public Charter Schools Association and CSN were primarying Republicans who weren't supportive before the governor began primarying. I
Oh, no.
wonder, where do you think the governor learned what he might be able to get done here?
You're right, Ted. I mean, I think in that same conversation where we were talking about just this tension between advocacy and member services, we talked about how we're not going to be feared and respected unless we make some examples of people. And that was, gosh, I can't remember the year, but that was pretty early on in Starley's tenure. And And they did. And you're right. I mean, and I think when we kind of like primaried and won the first couple races, that's when people were kind of like, wait, this is not my grandfather's association. This is new. And it was kind of like off to the races from there. Ryan Hecker, who was on the team, was kind of the brains behind a lot of this and was, phenomenal. I think he's doing some work with Sparley now at the federal level. But it was just, her ability to kind of find it's what we all know: leadership, building a great team, being goals focused, a board that kind of like kept people focused. I mean, I remember you and I having like, our dozenth conversation about the dashboard, and finally we got it and had something to like, hold the team accountable to. And, everything just kind of started working from there. And it was really fun to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm insufferable on.
No way, man. Hey, persistence matters.
But hey, I'm going to say, I think the Texas Public Charter School Association had the best dashboard in the country.
Yeah.
And
it might be the best state association in the country.
It did amazing stuff. And, when you say that your experience over the last 5 years has been some of the work that you've done on state association boards is some of the most meaningful that you've done. I mean, that's music to my ears because it just allows me to say with greater confidence, hey, if you're not on the board of your state association, but you're a great leader and you got swagger and you're doing great with kids, come get on these boards and you can make a difference. And by the way, we've learned enough about what the work of these organizations is as is expressed by their dashboards, such that you can come on and become a great board member in probably 6 months. Whereas a decade ago, it would have taken you 3 or 4 years to start to understand this stuff. And, you have helped build an example at Texas that everybody's learning from. Thank you for being on the board. I'm going to try and, send you invites. Hey, can these people come and attend your board meetings? Can these 2 or 3 people, every time you guys get together? When I was invited, I learned so much, and I think others would as well. And you've been stewarding that.
Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth at the Tennessee Association and Jamie Simmons, who chairs that board, they came to our last board meeting. I gave them the pre-read materials just so they can see the quality of what the board gets before the meeting. And I think being able to spread that love and have other people benefit from that. I mean, the work that Natalie and the team are doing there is phenomenal. Starley was absolutely the right leader at the right time to kind of like make the pivot. I think Natalie's absolutely the right leader now. And the fact we've gotten this like incredible twofer of Starley working federally to do great work there. And now Natalie in Texas. I mean, it's worked out better than anyone could imagine.
Well, after Starley was identified or after she had been hired and all that, we saw each other for the first time and we happened to be like on opposite sides of a room. And we ended up crossing to each other. And literally, Chris, I said, Starley, what am I going to say to you? And she said, you're going to tell me that I need a dashboard. And so, and she's off to the, because she understands the work at whole other levels, that's why she's just poised to be an incredible leader for us at the national level. All right, let's wrap this up and let's look to the future here. What do you, I mean, the swagger stuff certainly, implies what you're thinking about but hey, you're 55 years old. Don, did it to 79. And, if an illness hadn't, caught him, he probably would have done it to 99. I think we have too many of our people, that have left at the age of 55 and we want them to come back. If there's anything, I would just say is, hey, Barbic, you have made a lifetime's worth of contributions, by the age of 55, but we're now expecting, a big chunk of time out of you. I mean, what do you do next?
Well, thanks for saying that. I love my work at City Fund right now. So I feel like, I want to stay here as long as they'll have me because, it's this great mix of, I feel like I'm at this age now, my wife and I were talking about this recently where you kind of reach this point where you just want to like give everything away. I mean, when you're like striving and in your 30s and 40s, you're trying to compete. Sometimes you like hold things close to the vest. Like I'm way past that point now. So just being able to like work with younger, leaders, newer leaders, mentor them, just share with them like the wins, but more importantly, all the things I screwed up. Man, I could do that till forever. I mean, I love doing it. And there's so many great people, in this next generation of leaders doing this work. And this job affords me the opportunity to do some of that. I get to serve on boards like we talked about. That feels like a pretty high leverage spot. So I'm just trying to, give away as much as I can, whether it's knowledge or our resources at City Fund to help local leaders, create more great schools. It's super rewarding work, and man, if this is the last chapter, it feels like a pretty privileged one and a huge opportunity. So, really, really, really grateful for that too.
Sounds like a great platform from which to be a swagger ambassador.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and yeah, just kind of like, yeah, maybe the Johnny Appleseed of swagger. I can just kind of like one school leader at a time. And I've been trying to do that. I think, the seeds are starting to take root, like we talked about. So I'll be excited when we have a forest of swagger and trees all across the country. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing.
Well, I don't want to be too obsequious here. Starlee said in our recent chat that she believed that there had never been as much alignment between the funders and our advocates about what we need to do, what the structure is, that we have right now. And I think City Fund is a very key part of this. I mean, I give you guys a hard time on stuff, and sometimes people tell me, "Kool-Aid, man, you're like," but I'm going to keep being insufferable. But in the macro, the risk for funders or for funding organizations is that they move from swagger into hubris. And there's just something about, I mean, Reed's been doing this for so long. I don't know if you listened to John Arnold, on the recent podcast when he was on with Tyler Cowen, and he was also on with, what was he on with, Peter Attia? I don't know. But, when he's talking about the education work, there's just no hubris there.
Right.
This is hard. This is difficult. We're making a difference. We wish we could make a difference even faster than we're going right now, but we're staying this course. And there have been so many others in the landscape that have just like Johnny come lately. They come and they go, right?
Mhm.
And it seems as though both for yourself, and the organization you're now working in, you have a chance to just stay focused and grow impact with that tone of swagger you're talking about.
Well, you're right, and we're fortunate to be able to do that. I mean, we're definitely playing the long game. Our board allows us to play the long game. They're committed to the long game, and when you're playing the long game, I think it just gives you space to build different, more trusting relationships with the people that you're working with, which, in the end of the day, I think leads to a better chance for better results. And so, and we're lucky to have board members like Reed and John who afford us the opportunities to do that. So, yeah, man, I feel like I'm kind of in the catbird seat in this spot I'm in right now. And I just want to use it to do as much good work and have as much of an impact as I can.
That's awesome. Well, into playing the long game, if we are actually a movement, and we're going to sustain the work over multiple generations, then we've got to do a great job of celebrating those that went first and having a great Hall of Fame and those kinds of things. So, you're serving as that example for so many of us now, and I just don't want to let you off the hook. Yeah, you've been an incredible example, but I wouldn't be surprised if you might look back and say the next decade is as high of impact as you've had anywhere else in your career, and just beat on me mercilessly if there's something that I can do to be helping you, or you see where CharterFolk and my work can align with a swagger agenda, because I really think you put your finger on something important here.
Well, gosh, Ted, I hope you're right. I mean, there is going to be, I think, tons of disruption in our world the next decade, which, we both know, in disruption lies opportunity. I think there's lots of opportunity. Our kids deserve it. They're counting on us. So I hope, we can do one of these 10 years from now and talk about all the kick-ass schools that have gotten started in the last 10 years. So Can't wait.
All right, that's great. Well, Chris, thanks again for spending this time. Congratulations again. It couldn't be more thrilled for you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Yeah. Bye bye.